Your alarm went off at the exact time it always does this morning. Same sound, same side of the bed, same first 3 seconds of blinking at the ceiling, waiting for the day to introduce itself. And somewhere underneath that sameness, before your brain even loaded the to-do list, something in your chest already knew this Tuesday wasn't going to feel like the others. Maybe it showed up as a tightness you couldn't name yet, a low hum behind your sternum that had nothing to do with what was actually on your calendar. Maybe it was the opposite, an odd looseness, like your shoulders dropped an inch you never consciously told them to drop. Maybe you reached for your phone out of habit, and then, for no clear reason, put it back down without opening it. Or maybe it was quieter than any of that, just a sense, somewhere under your ribs, that today was going to ask something different of you than yesterday did. Whatever shape it took, you felt it before you thought it. And that order, feeling first, explaining second, matters more than you've probably ever stopped to consider. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Your body doesn't wait for permission from your mind to register a shift. It reads the room first and explains itself later, sometimes hours later, sometimes never, unless you go looking for the reason yourself. Today, there's an actual reason, not a vague one, not a "the universe is doing something" kind of reason, a specific, trackable one, happening in the sky right now. And it lines up almost exactly with the kind of static or clarity, or both at once, that you might be sitting with this morning. So let's actually talk about what's going on up there and why your body clocked it before your mind did. There's a small window every morning that sleep researchers describe as the shift out of theta brainwave activity into alpha, the transition between still being partly asleep and being fully, narratively awake. You're technically up, your eyes are open, you might already be moving through the motions of your routine. But the analytical part of your mind, the part that explains and labels and reasons things out, hasn't fully clocked in for its shift yet. In that window, sensation moves faster than language. You feel first. You interpret later, if you interpret at all. It's the same reason a dream can still feel more real than your bedroom for the first 30 seconds after you wake. The feeling arrives before the story does. Most mornings, that gap closes so fast you never even notice it happened. This week, for a lot of people, it might be lasting a little longer, or landing a little heavier than usual, and that's not a coincidence. Several real things are happening overhead at once right now, and your nervous system happens to be one of the few instruments sensitive enough to register more than one of them at the same time, even before you've had coffee. Right now, you're sitting inside the stretch between two eclipses, one that already happened a little while back, one that's still ahead of you. A window like that tends to work in two parts. The first eclipse usually opens a theme, and the second one, still ahead of you, tends to bring some kind of closure or release on that exact same theme. The stretch in between isn't dead air. It's often the most revealing part of the whole sequence because the theme is still actively being worked out, rather than already resolved, which is a large part of why the nervous system stays a little more porous than usual during it, a little quicker to pick up on a shift before the conscious mind has caught up with why. On top of that, the moon has spent the last couple of days moving through one of its most intense placements, the kind that pulls things up from underneath instead of leaving them on the surface where they're easy to manage. And by Thursday, it crosses into a completely different register entirely, lighter, more forward-facing, more interested in the horizon than in whatever's been sitting at the bottom. You are standing right at that hinge point today. Tuesday morning, still partly caught in the undertow. Thursday morning, already halfway out the door. That alone would explain a strange couple of days. But there's a second layer sitting right underneath it, and it's worth walking through slowly, because this is where most of what you're feeling actually comes from. For the last stretch, you've probably been more sensitive than usual in ways that didn't always make obvious sense. Old conversations replaying uninvited while you were doing something completely unrelated. A mood you couldn't quite trace back to any single event. A heaviness in ordinary moments, folding laundry, sitting in traffic, scrolling without really reading, that didn't match what was actually happening around you. Maybe you found yourself unusually short-tempered over something small, or unusually tearful over something you'd normally shrug off. That tracks almost exactly with where the moon's been sitting. A placement tied to depth, memory, and emotional undertow. It doesn't invent feelings out of nowhere. What it tends to do is pull already present feelings closer to the surface, where you can finally see them clearly enough to actually do something about them, instead of carrying them around unexamined. If the last 2 or 3 days felt unusually intense, that is very likely why. And the part worth holding on to, especially if it's been a heavy few days, is that undertows don't last by nature. This one is already loosening its grip as you're hearing this. None of this is only emotional either. It's common during a stretch like this to notice it in stranger, more physical ways too. Sleep that's lighter than usual or oddly vivid right before you wake. An appetite that shifts without a clear reason. A lower tolerance for noise or crowds than you'd normally have. None of that needs a diagnosis attached to it. And it's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's simply what tends to happen when the nervous system is running more input than usual and hasn't finished sorting through it yet. Give it a few days to settle before you assume it means more than that. By Thursday, the moon shifts into a sign built for expansion rather than excavation. Bigger questions, further horizons, noticeably less patience for staying small or staying quiet. You may feel that shift arrive first as restlessness, before it arrives as anything resembling clarity. A sudden urge to make a plan you'd been sitting on. An impulse to book the thing, send the message, finally say out loud what you've been rehearsing silently for weeks. That kind of energy can feel disorienting if you mistake it for randomness, but it isn't random. It's your system sensing open water ahead and wanting to move toward it before it's fully sure why. Give the restlessness a few days before you judge it or talk yourself out of it. Restlessness that arrives right before a genuine opening tends to look identical in the first hour to restlessness that means nothing at all. Time is usually the only thing that tells the two apart. It's pointing somewhere real, even if the destination isn't obvious yet. Here's where it gets genuinely layered though, because the moon isn't the only thing moving. In just the last day or so, 2 very different planetary conversations reach their peak within hours of each other, and your body has been trying to process both at once. It's rare for 2 aspects this different in character to peak inside the same short window. Usually you get one dominant tone, holding for a few days at a time, not 2 competing ones stacked directly on top of each other. One involved Venus and Jupiter, meeting in a way that tends to open doors, soften old tension, and make generosity toward others and toward yourself noticeably easier than usual. A genuine ease signal, the kind that shows up as an unexpected kindness from someone, a problem resolving itself with far less effort than you'd braced for, or a wave of warmth toward your own life that arrives without an obvious trigger. The other involved Mars and Neptune, a pairing that tends to blur edges instead of sharpening them. Motivation without a clear target. A low hum of confusion about what you actually want, even when the want itself feels strong. A wave of emotion that turns out, on closer inspection, not to be fully yours, something absorbed from a room, a conversation, a headline, without you registering the moment it entered you. Most weeks, your body only has to metabolize one dominant signal at a time. This week, it's metabolizing two, and they don't cancel each other out. They layer. So if you felt pulled in opposite directions in the same hour, hopeful 1 minute and foggy the next, generous one moment and strangely unmotivated the next, that isn't a contradiction sitting inside you. That's an accurate read of what's actually happening above you, translated faithfully into a body that doesn't know how to lie about what it's picking up. You don't have to take any of this on faith either. These aren't vague, generic placements pulled from a template that could apply to any week of the year. They're specific configurations happening at specific points right now, trackable on any real ephemeris if you want to check them yourself later. Whatever you personally believe about how much the sky actually shapes a Tuesday morning, the timing lining up this closely with what you're already feeling is worth paying attention to on its own merits. Zoom out even further, and there's a slower story running underneath all of this. Since late summer, the North Node, the point astrologers use to track collective direction rather than individual mood, has been settling into a new sign. And the broader shift it's building toward is still young, still finding its shape. Think of it as a much larger current running beneath the smaller, faster tides of this particular week. You don't need to consciously track it for it to matter to you. It's part of why different doesn't just mean this one Tuesday in isolation. It means this Tuesday sitting inside a longer season where a lot of things, personally and collectively, are quietly rearranging themselves into a new order. Now here's the part that actually matters most for what you do with all of this, because not every internal alarm is the same alarm, and mixing them up is probably the single most common mistake people make during a layered stretch like this one. Anxiety and intuition can feel almost identical in the first 3 seconds. Both show up physically, in the body, before you've had time to think a single, coherent sentence about them. Both arrive uninvited. Both can raise your heart rate, tighten your jaw, make your stomach drop without warning. But they behave very differently if you sit with them for even 30 more seconds instead of reacting immediately, and learning to tell the two apart is genuinely one of the more useful skills you can practice this week. Anxiety tends to be loud, vague, and aimed at the future. It rarely points at one clear, specific thing. Instead, it spirals outward. It catastrophizes. It demands that you fix something right now, even when there's nothing concrete in front of you to actually fix. Ask it, fix what exactly? And it usually can't answer cleanly. It gets louder the longer you sit with it, not quieter, and it tends to borrow its intensity from a dozen unrelated worries at once, rather than committing to one. A genuine signal behaves almost the opposite way. It tends to be quieter and oddly specific. It doesn't ask you to panic or scramble. It points toward one particular person, one particular decision, one conversation you've been avoiding, a direction you already half know is right, even if you haven't said it out loud yet. Sometimes it's as small as suddenly knowing which of two options was correct the moment you sit down to actually write out your day, or feeling unexpectedly calm about something you assumed would still feel frightening. And here's the real tell, the one worth remembering long after this video ends. It doesn't get louder the more you sit still with it. It gets clearer. If anything, it tends to soften once it's finally been noticed and acknowledged, the same way a held breath softens the moment you finally let it out. So if this morning felt different in a way you couldn't quite place, take a second and ask yourself honestly which one you're actually holding. Loud and vague, or quiet and specific? Does it want you to panic, or does it simply want you to notice? The sky right now is genuinely layered enough to produce both kinds of static in the same 24 hours. But only one of them actually needs your attention, and only one of them is telling you something true. This isn't about waiting for some dramatic lightning bolt moment of clarity, because that's rarely how it actually works. The shift available this week tends to be smaller and considerably more useful than that. A decision that suddenly feels obvious after weeks of going back and forth without resolution. A conversation you finally have out loud instead of rehearsing it silently for the 10th time. A plan that clicks into place simply because you stopped overriding the quiet, specific signal in favor of the loud, vague one that's been drowning it out. None of that is guaranteed, and nobody can promise you a specific outcome by a specific date, but the conditions for it are unusually good right now, layered and porous in a way they aren't most weeks, and conditions like that are worth actually working with while they're here, instead of waiting for a more convenient moment that might not arrive with the same clarity. So here's something worth actually trying today, not just hearing and forgetting by lunchtime. Tomorrow morning, or even later today, if you catch yourself mid-transition between sleep and fully awake, give yourself 60 seconds before you reach for your phone. Not to meditate, not to perform stillness for its own sake. Just to notice what's already there before you start narrating it into something else. A tightness somewhere specific. A pull toward a particular person. A single thought that keeps returning uninvited no matter how many times you set it down. Don't judge it yet, and don't rush to explain it either. Just notice it, and if it feels worth keeping, write down one honest sentence about it somewhere you'll actually see again later today. You're not trying to solve anything in that first minute. You're simply catching the signal before the noise of the day writes over it completely. The same way you'd try to catch a dream before it dissolves in the first 5 minutes of being fully awake. If it helps, do a smaller version of the same thing again tonight, right before you fall asleep. Ask yourself what actually felt true today, separate from what felt urgent. The two aren't always the same thing, and most people only ever chase the urgent one, then wonder later why it didn't lead anywhere. If any part of this matched something you've been feeling and couldn't quite explain until now, you're not imagining it, and you're not sitting with it alone this morning. A lot of people are moving through this exact layered stretch right now, whether or not they have the language for it yet. If you want, drop a word in the comments about which part actually landed for you. The undertow finally loosening, the two signals running at once, or the difference between anxiety and a genuine signal. It helps, more than you'd think, to know you read it correctly and that someone else out there is standing at the exact same hinge point today. And if content like this is genuinely useful to you, subscribing just means you won't miss the next real shift when it lands. Nothing here is telling you what you have to do next. You don't owe this week a dramatic decision by Thursday, and you don't have to resolve everything the sky happens to be highlighting in the next couple of days. What you do have, simply from sitting through the last few minutes, is a slightly clearer read on your own signal than you had yesterday morning. And that alone is not nothing. It's the difference between reacting to static and actually listening to something true underneath it. Whatever this Tuesday turned out to be for you, difficult or lighter or some strange mix of both, it isn't asking you to perform a certainty you don't actually have. Give yourself until Thursday morning before you expect anything to look completely different, and give yourself some grace in the meantime for however this window is genuinely landing in your body, rather than how you think it's supposed to look from the outside. Your body was never wrong about noticing that something changed. All that's left now is deciding calmly and on your own timeline what to actually do with what it already told you. You get to choose. This week just made it a little easier to hear the choice in the first place. Tomorrow, when your alarm goes off at the exact same time it always does, pause for just a second before you sit up. See if the same feeling from this morning is still there, or if it's already shifted into something else entirely. Either answer is fine. The only thing that actually matters is that you're finally listening for it.